this year's FIFA Women's World Cup is such a pivotal moment for women in sport. We saw a great week with Australia beating Brazil. With growing support through new broadcast deals and sponsorship, it is really pumping.
Yeah, it certainly is, Tim. It seems like there's a changing tide for female athletes at the moment, but of course there is still a very long way to go. The issue is this week's Deep Dive.
Returning to tennis after the birth of her first child last year, tennis powerhouse Serena Williams has re-entered Forbes' annual ranking of the world's highest paid athletes. She came in at number 63 out of 100, but is still the only woman on the list.
That is not right. You know it, and I know you can't admit it, but I know you know it's not right.
For a long time, women athletes have been playing catch-up, not featuring in ad campaigns or sponsorship deals. But not anymore.
Yes.
If girls don't see women in sport, they won't stay in sport. They won't learn that
We can call the shots. We are stronger together.
The world's biggest brands are now going viral, boosted by female athletes.
Crazy, 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 and crazy. So if they want to call you crazy, fine. Show them what crazy can do.
With sponsorship and ad campaigns comes the money. It was a great step forward for Australia's French Open winner Barty. Her first Grand Slam came with a winner's cheque of over 3.7 million Australian dollars.
She's done it! Barty.
All right, well, for more, we are joined from Melbourne, I should say, from Dr. Barty O'Donnell, Director of the Office for Women in Sport and Recreation.
And in the studio here we have Mim Haysom, Chief Marketing Officer at Suncorp. Mim, thanks for coming in. And Mark Cameron, Managing Director at Jaguar Land Rover Australia. Great to have you all with us today.
Thank you so much for being here. Mim, I'd love to start with you this morning in terms of Suncorp. Super Netball League. We have that amazing Team Girls chant that we hear all throughout the netball weekends. I don't know if it's in your household, Timmy, but it's certainly in mine. Tell us about the appeal to sponsor the netball and how long. You've signed on for 5 years.
Yes, so we started our partnership with Netball Australia back in 2017 and there were a couple of reasons why it really appealed to us and we took on that partnership. The first was that it made really good commercial sense. So netball is the second highest participation sport in Australia and obviously the first for women and girls. And with that passion and that growth in the sport, we're now seeing around 5 million people a year looking at the broadcast and the live streaming. So the netball platform gives us access to great audiences and they're highly engaged and loyal audiences. And the second reason why we loved the partnership was that there was great alignment between Suncorp's values and Netball Australia's values. So Suncorp spends a lot of time investing in building resilient communities and has a real focus on diversity and inclusion and equality, and that's very aligned with netball. So we felt like we could build a really strong platform for both brands to grow the sport and provide a platform also to let some of those fantastic role models have a role to grow the sport.
Barty, that must be music to your ears. For so long, women's sport has lagged, sponsorship has lagged, money hasn't been. There's still a long way to go before it all levels out.
There certainly is a long way to go, but we also know that time of a league usually equates to the amount of investment. So in the US, it's no surprise that golf and tennis, the oldest established leagues for professional women athletes, are bringing in the greatest revenue both for the athletes and the leagues. But I think it's interesting that Mim also highlighted the value piece, because for so many organisations it is really important that they're aligned with a company or a sport that agrees with the way they look at things. And certainly last year, when Australians were surveyed about their most popular teams in the whole country, the top 4 teams were women's teams, and the rugby women's sevens teams was the most popular team in Australia because of marketability, accessibility, how inclusive they are, how much they win and how much they like them. So the ROI for any sponsor getting involved in the rugby women's sevens would be huge.
Well, there is one lady that we are all talking about at the moment. That is Ash Barty. I mean, Mark, for you, having the likes of Ash Barty, who, yes, of course, she's just gone and won her French Open, but she's so humble and she's a hard worker and she's a brilliant role model.
And it's exactly the same as being said. It's about values. And sometimes when Ash is only 23, when you sort of pick early with an athlete in their sport, you have to look at who she has around her, what guidance she's had from her parents, the background, and say, right, is this something we want to build our brand with? And sometimes it works and sometimes it does less so. But Ash has been phenomenal, and her performance now to win the French Open and #2 in the world, when not so long ago she was playing cricket and doing other things. It's just an incredible story.
She's an
23.
Yeah, an extraordinary sports person to go to cricket, come back to tennis, and the money that Ash won, that $3-odd million, and money is comparable now in tennis, and it took a revolution in the 70s for that to happen. If you go back to when Margaret Court won, she won, I think it was 75-odd francs or whatever, if you comparably, and Ilie Nastase won 4 times that amount. So things have changed in the world of tennis. But Mim, from your perspective, when you look at the corporate side of things, it's all good and well to have goodwill and you want to get behind certain sports, women's sports or others, but there also has to be a bit of a commercial edge. You can't be a charity, can you?
Yeah, that's right. And as I touched on before, for us, I think there's a real opportunity to help grow the sport. And with that comes a very passionate and loyal audience. And it also gives us the opportunity to build our brand through creating platforms that have some community impact. And we recently did some research, which was the 2019 Suncorp Youth and Confidence Report. And what that uncovered was that there is a real challenge at the moment with teenage girls and self-esteem. And we know that sport builds resilience and confidence and life skills. And so we really see that there's an opportunity for us to play a role in building resilient communities and resilient teenagers through the platform of sport. There's the hard commercial aspect, but then there's also the community building and the brand building aspect as well.
I mean, on that figure, it's almost 50% of teenage girls by the time they're 17 have dropped out of sport. I mean, that's a massive figure. Mark, I suppose for you, when it comes to Ash Barty, what does the French Open signal for you and that sponsorship there?
Well, it works at different levels. I mean, clearly for Jaguar, it's about brand awareness as well, and it's about her being a role model to the customers of the future. There aren't many 23-year-olds yet buying our cars, but you need to build for the future, and the brand association is very valuable. And clearly, if your brand's then on the apparel, which it is with Ash, and we'll see that more clearly in Wimbledon when it's just white and stands out, that has a huge value. And that's the television audience, the broadcast that's going with women's sport is the big commercial progression that we're seeing. As bigger audiences, more valuable, more eyeballs, as we call it, and that's where you get your commercial payback.
It's interesting you mentioned Wimbledon because we're going to have a story in a few weeks' time about how Wimbledon is one sport where it has to stay quintessentially English, and that is part of their marketing campaign. If you want to corporatise, you need to be a part of their broadcast. They don't have anything flying across screens or in the backdrops. Now, Barty, for you, from your perspective, in your role, what is your message to corporate Australia, to the rest of this country, that they should take on board and get behind women's sport at every level?
The investment in women's sport needs to start at the grassroots. And as Mim said, we know a lot of girls drop out of sport because they don't feel included or safe, or they don't feel that they're good enough. And yet what we know is that team sports actually teaches us a whole lot of really important life skills, like how do we fail, how do we work with people we don't like, how do we have a plan B, C and D, and how do we cope when it's raining and cold, all of the things that we actually need to help us cope with disappointment. And the more we build all of these strong athletes, and we've seen that in our Matildas, in our WBBL players, that these become extraordinary Australians and role models for everyone. And also we see globally that women leaders globally are most likely to have been involved in competitive sport. 96% of CEOs globally who are women have been competitive athletes. It teaches you leadership skills. It teaches you how to work with others. And that's what we want for the girls and women in Australia, to have the same opportunities that the boys and men do.
Mim, I know Suncorp is very much committed to helping decrease that dropout rate in sport. Why is it so pivotal for you?
Well, I think because the sport does, exactly as Barty just said, it does build resilience, it builds confidence, it builds life skills. And so for us, I think it's really important to help support that in the community space and on the ground. And we've got a great opportunity to do that through netball. And as I mentioned before, there's amazing role models for girls in the netball community. You know, Liz Ellis, Laura Geitz, just to name a few. And I think by profiling these fantastic women in sport, it can inspire and motivate and help young girls have the confidence to stay in sport and then learn those great life skills and become female leaders, and that helps to build equality in a whole lot of different ways.
Certainly does.
Our house is a very sporty household. My wife was a volleyball player, represented Queensland at her age group. My daughter's into ponies and soccer. You're a father of a daughter. This is music to my ears, this story, because I love it and I see their confidence. I see Bridget's confidence grow in sport and in her activities.
Absolutely, and where there are so many other distractions that are, you know, around gaming or other things where you know, the art of social interaction, of building confidence, of building life skills, getting out and playing sport early, and maintaining it. My daughter got to a fairly good level in swimming. And the community and the friends that she built, not just through the sport, but the people that she met where she used to travel to, you know, it's great.
It's a lot better than those garbage social messages, stories and arguments and discussions that they can have. So let's get them involved in sport. If you are part of corporate Australia, come on, get behind it. Dr. Barty, thank you so much for joining us today. And Mim and Mark, it's been great. A really good chat.
Thank you so much for joining us.